Hi everyone. Great to be back here on CSF with this very interesting workshop, which we have sort of based on our experiences and experiments over the last few years. So classics were always something that all of us, all three of us, are avid readers. Like many of you out there, and classics were something that always resonated with us. The beauty, the way, what comes out from them. But sometimes it was a bit scary to, bring it out as an oral storytelling because, after all, a classic is a classic for a reason. But, once we started doing it, we realized that there was so much satisfaction and creativity that went into it. And we were able to create something which retained it, but made it brought out something very different from it. So I would say that today's workshop, we would like to share what worked for us in all these various programs that we have worked on. And of course, we would like to hear from you too, based on your experiences. Just a brief introduction. I am Meera Venkateshan, a professional storyteller trainer and also a learning and design specialist based in Bangalore. And I am a part of this group, KathaKrafters, with whom I've had the joy of doing many, many different, very varied programs and performances. And of course, we are waiting to do more. So I'll just have Anaga and Parvati briefly introduce themselves.
Hi, this is Anaga Prasad. I am also based out of Bangalore and I've been into storytelling for the last 10 years. My passion is also Bharatanatyam. I've been dancing for the last 7, 8 years. It's a lot of joy to combine my passion of dance, yoga, and story and bring it all together. And this collaboration of the three of us gives me the platform to experiment, explore, and uh, grow as an artist, as a performer, and as a person. Parvati?
I'm Parvati Ishwaran. I'm based at Coimbatore, and both of them have told whatever I wanted to tell. Yes, it is a great experience. We have had bringing out so many in this platform itself. We have brought in Tagore stories, we brought in Weaver stories, we brought in women who were so many. And every time we sit together and we plan and we discuss so many thoughts and so much of, as Anaga rightly said, a lot of improvements, not only in our telling, in the way we think, and outlook also, a lot of changes have happened. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Parvati and Anaga. So we have a small, cozy group today, and it's so I'm really looking forward to a lot of interaction from all of you, which will help to enrich us too as we speak and give us perspectives which we have not thought of before. And of course, at the end of it, at the end of this workshop, we hope that we would have shared with you something that will help you in your experiments forward. We don't claim to be big fish. We are still very tiny fish in this huge, beautiful world of oral storytelling. And but thanks to Eric, this is something we get as an opportunity to share what we know. And here goes. So so. Uh, Before we start, I would just like to, get your thoughts. You can either respond on chat, or you can unmute yourself and speak. I see some of you were traveling. I know it could be difficult, but yeah, it would be great if you could unmute and speak, or share your thoughts as and when we are having any activity. Since this is a smaller group, we will not be doing any breakout rooms, so we'll be having all the activities in the main room itself so that all of us can learn from each other. Well, I think the first question is, it's a very basic question that I would like to just throw at all of you. What what makes a classic endure? What is it about a classic that you think lives? What would you say is this difference between a story and a classic? Any thoughts? So if you could put down your thoughts, unmute and speak, put it out on chat.
Classic, can I?
Yes,
Classic,
Rajan.
classic also speaks about the environment around the era in which the stories take place. Maybe it goes with history, and also it takes along the time, maybe the present, and that's why it stays for a longer time. I feel that's why it becomes a classic. And the
Okay.
characters are very normal, everyday characters that we see. Normal, it happens in every day. I just think so. Yeah.
Okay, so it brings with it, it's not just about the characters. The characters may be every day, but it brings with it the environment in which the characters are there and sort of creates a picture which we are able to resonate with. Thank you. Thank you. That's beautiful. Yes. Anyone else?
Hi. This is Nitya Rangarajan.
Yeah.
So, actually, I feel classics are they have heroes who are ideal, kind of ideal, and mostly the truth always triumphs. Like that, it will be more 99%. It will be positive. So maybe here and there something will be negative, but ultimately it will have a moral which ensures that truth always triumphs or honesty always wins, something like that. And the heroes are always little, ideal kind of.
Okay. Okay. So it gives a positive model which would
Yes,
probably
yes.
endure across generations too, right? So yeah,
Mm,
very
mm,
interesting
mm.
thought. Thank you, Nitya. Anyone else?
Eric has posted his response.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A classic portrays an experience many people have and may relate to a specific culture and time period. Yes, thank you, Rick. Anyone else wants to share?
According to me, classic is that which stays in your memory.
Sophie, can you be a little louder?
Yeah, that which stays in your memory for long. I can tell that as classic.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, something that stays in your memory. But what is it about it that stays in your memory, right? So
That which
that's,
resonates with us.
sorry?
That which resonates with us.
Yes, there is something in the classic that resonates with us and, sometimes transcends generations. The basic humanness of it, or maybe the basic relationships. So, definitely, there is a level of complexity, right, in a classic, not complexity of the plot. It would sometimes be more complexity of the emotions, complexity of the relationships. Sometimes there could be some moral gravity that is there as a background, while the story in the foreground is by itself could be quite simple or quite convoluted. It could be, and there are many classics where this differs, but the background or what provides the backdrop of the story. It could be the environment, it could be the moral dilemma, it could be the play of emotions. Sometimes, more than anything else, it is just the beautiful language that just captures us and elevates the story to a level which we never ever thought of before. So, as a child, I have to share this. So, as a child, growing up in India, my parents introduced me to a lot of adaptations of Shakespeare stories. And as a very, very avid reader, I was always lost. I used to wonder, what is this? Why is this called a classic? What is so, this is just one story. It's so simple, like, start, finish kind. So it took me a lot more time and then actual reading of the classics to really understand that the story is just one part of it. So I would like to say, share this thought that, comes to me often, that a classic, you can sort of look at it from three angles. One is the plot itself, right? One is the message, or you could say what comes out of it, or what is intended to come out of it, and one is the essence of it. So the three parts of a story are what sort of bring them together to make a classic. So a case in point, of course, I would like to take a story which, of course, in India is universally known, the Ramayana. If I can share my screen, 1 minute. Yeah. So the Ramayana is, in its essence, you could say a very simple story, which is actually encapsulated by this shloka, which is called a single shloka Ramayana or Eka Shloki Ramayana. So it goes like Ado Rama Tapovanadi Gavanam, Hatva Mrgam Kanchanam, Vaidehi Haranam, Jatayu Maranam, Sugriva Sambhashanam, Bali Nigrahanam, Samudra Taranam, Lankapuri Dahanam, Paschat Ravana Kumbhakarnadi Hananam, Etadhi Ramayana. So what is Ramayana all about? Rama and Lakshmana go to the forest, and there they happen to kill a golden deer. That sets off a path where Sita is kidnapped. And then there is Jatayu who comes to her rescue, is killed. And then there is a dialogue with Sugriva. There is the death of Bali. And then they cross the ocean, go to Lanka, where, of course, Rama, Ravana, and Kumbhakarna are killed, and then they rescue Sita back. So at the core of it, it is a very, very simple story, you could say. The plot of it is very linear, right? Now, if you look at what is the message from it, the message pretty much is like, I think Nitya shared, it is that there is a victory of good over evil. So it's trying to tell us that across any era, across any generation, there is a victory of good over evil. But where are the essence of it? What is the essence of it? It's courage. It could be courage in the face of trauma, courage in the face of difficulties. How do it could give an example of how someone could take life as it comes and still carry on with joys and happiness. It could be a moral dilemma of dharma or duty versus desire. So I would like to just read out this small shloka which comes in Ramayana. It's a small couplet. It basically goes like shoka, which is sadness. Shoka nashayate dhairyam. Shoka nashayate shrutam. Shoka nashayate sarvam. Nasti shoka sama ripu. Basically, this is a couplet which is told by Kaushalya, the mother of Rama, to her husband Dasharatha, after Rama has gone into the forest with Sita and Lakshmana. The mother of Rama is advising her husband that stop this sorrow, because sorrow is what destroys your courage. Sorrow destroys your knowledge. Sorrow destroys everything, and sorrow is your biggest enemy. Now, when you bring a simplified version of the classic, of the entire epic, then there is a huge, huge chance that something as beautiful as this, the courage, what comes out of this, will get lost. Right? So how do we bring that essence of it? And I would like to take one more quick example. If you look at the story of Romeo and Juliet, what is it? At the end of it, it's a story of forbidden teenage love and feuding families. Correct? And what is the message? Probably one of the messages is that blind loyalty can result in tragedy. You can find your own message there too. But what is the essence of it? What is it that comes out as you read the classic? That what you inherit probably is what you choose and not what you get. Romeo and Juliet decided to inherit something from their families, which was not what everyone else did. And so in the famous dialogue of Juliet from the balcony, she talks about what is in a name for Romeo. What does it mean? What does his name of a Montague mean for him? What does it mean for her? Is that what he inherited? Or is that what Is it something more? What is it that she likes about him? Correct? So if you look at it, every classic will have a plot. You can say definitely a message and an essence. So I would say that when you adapt a classic, you go for the plot. When you adopt a classic to retell, you go for the essence of it. What is it that you're trying to convey? What is the essence that is there in it that you want to convey in a better way? So I'd just like to do a small activity, and I'm going to request all of you to do that. Can you please pick any classic of your choice and try to identify its plot, its message, and essence? And maybe you can take a couple of minutes. So, what is it? Where is that? What is? Do you think is its plot? And try to keep each of them to a couple of sentences, so that we can think. You can think about it later, but for now, it is just you're touching the surface of it. So, pick any classic of your choice. You can identify its plot, its message, and its essence.
Hi, Mira.
Hi, Nitya.
So, should it be a whole classic or a part of a classic?
I would say you pick a whole classic. So then you will be able to see that while the plot would be more, there wouldn't be too many opinions about it. But when you go for the essence, you will have multiple thoughts on it. So while I'm not asking you to sort of encapsulate it all and bring it out into the group, but if you could just put two sentences on the plot, the message, and the essence.
Okay. I would take up a Mahabharata. Okay. Another epic of India. So, the essence of the Mahabharata may be perceived by each one as a different one. But what I see in that is the essence is when you surrender yourself to the God, everything, the rest will be taken care. For example, one instance is Draupadi, Vastrahalani. So when the whole court is keeping quiet, and even the king and everyone is keeping quiet, then the sari was pulled away from her. But the only thing, she had faith. Even her husbands left her off, but still, when she prayed to God, he gave her the sari, and he saved her. And then, when you see during the Kurukshetra war, Arjun was very hesitant how to fight against his cousins and everything. So, but he totally surrendered himself to the God, and he believed his words. So the
Beautiful.
Bhagavad Gita came, and then so these are two instances I'm just giving. So
Yeah.
throughout the epic, when you see, there is
Yes.
each and every place when you surrender yourself without questioning, then the Lord will take care of it.
Beautiful. So that is the essence of it that is coming out to
Yes,
you, right? So
yes, yes.
beautiful. So when you are adopting it, when you're adopting Mahabharata for your own
Mm,
retelling,
mm,
this essence may add more value than the plot itself, which, if you look at it, is basically a fight between brothers, cousins. Yeah, that's how it is reduced to sometimes, what is it, ancestral property kind of fight. If you look at it, at the end of it, that's what the plot gets quickly
Like the Ambanis.
Yes, very nice. Now, I would like to I would like you to hold on to that thought, Nitya, because we'll be working on it further in Anaga's segment when we talk about anchors in classics.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much for sharing. Anyone else wants to share? It could be any classic of your choice. It could even be a short story, not necessarily an epic. Anyone would want to share? Anyone? Okay, so yeah, so pretty much I think Nitya's example sort of beautifully brought that out, the difference between a plot and an essence, right? So if you could, for example, you take any classic, like let's say Pride and Prejudice, right? What would be the plot of that story? And what would be the essence? Anyone wants to share? What comes out to you? So there are multiple layers in a story, in a classic like that. While at the face of it, again, it is a linear story. There are so many different things, the least of which is a mirror to the society in that era, right? What was happening at that particular point of time. But that is something you could say was of that period. But there are so many things that even though we may have changed, our habits may have changed, our thoughts may have changed, there are so many things that still resonate with us, like ego masking insecurity, the beauty of transformation that happens, right? So, for example, in a story that I did once, a Tamil classic, Mani Megale, while the plot itself is, it's, while you could say the message is more of that compassion is, is a winner, compassion is greater than desire. Some of the things that came out to me as the essence was the fabric of suffering, or the shifting of how of different desires or everyday desires to a realization of a greater purpose. So these are some of the things that would come out as an essence. So when you pick up a classic, when you adopt a classic rather than adapt a classic, some of the things that you could definitely, I would like to just share a few pointers on what you could keep and what you could reframe. One is, of course, to keep the soul of the story, or what is it about the story that makes it click? What is it about the story that makes it beautiful? And please retain the emotional depth of the story, unless you are telling to very young kids. Now, even then, maybe the depth you may have to sort of keep it in check to a certain extent to which they understand. But I have seen that one of the most common things that do not click with retelling for children is that emotions are laid off. Whereas the classic itself has a beautiful emotional depth that will tug at your hearts, whatever age you are. So, how way you express it itself may be different, but retaining the emotional depth is something that I feel is very important. Moral complexity, or the gravity of the entire situation, is something that, again, in a classic is beautiful and gives so many different layers to think about. By flattening them, when we flatten them to make it about a plot, or even bring the plot to a modernized, just we make the entire thing modernized, we take an old classic and put it in a modern setting, there is a high chance that the complexity may get lost, especially if the complexity was grounded in that particular era. So we have to make sure that that is something that comes out and hits the audience in the way it was intended to. And of course, definitely not the least, the beauty of the expression. So any classic is not just about the plot, it's not even just about the essence, it's about how it is being expressed in a way that transcends the words, where it creates something so beautiful that it creates a connection directly from you to what you're reading or what you're seeing or what you're hearing. Now, if that expression is again flattened, then the beauty of a classic gets lost. So I would say that these are some things that I have found that it really helps to retain, even if you're trying to compress a classic into much shorter form. I would say we should try to keep these four. And what are the things you can reframe? I would say that you can reframe the lived experience based on your own lived experiences, based on whom to whom you're talking about, the way you want it to resonate. How can you make it more resonating to today's generation? It's not necessary that you should modernize it. There may be other different ways, because at the heart of it, the heart that has survived from then to now is still the same, and it just gets tugged in the same way, but with different things. So, how can you make it more resonating to your audience across cultures, across generations, across ages? That is something that it really makes sense to reframe. And of course, the point of view from which you are going to tell this classic. Because specifically when you are looking at something really huge, like some of what we talked about, which usually would go into hours and hours, how do you bring it shorter? How do you make it shorter? How do you make it still click? So, two of the things that have really worked for us is also identifying anchors and identifying a point of view that really works. And in today's workshop, we are going to be focusing on these three aspects rather. One is, of course, retain the essence, which is what I talked about. So make sure that the soul of the story is still there in whatever format you want to tell. How do you do that? We do that by using anchors, POVs. These are some of the two ways, I would say, not the only two ways, because of course this workshop is 1.5 hours, and we wouldn't want to, push it beyond that time either. So I would now hand it over to Anaga to talk about these aspects.
Yes. Thanks, Meera, for that good insight about what's a classic and what's a plot, what's an essence, and how we can even start adopting the classic for our own telling. So, before I would get into what an anchor is and how we can choose an anchor, that I will just narrate this classic. Of course, I cannot do the whole classic, so I would do an abridged version of this classic called Silapadigaram, which is one of the gems of Tamil literature. And as a KathaKrafter group, we explored these five literary epics and presented a show. So I think all the epics are very close to our heart, and I thought I will take Silapadigaram and just narrate it, and then we will go into what an anchor is. In the town of Poompuhar, where river Kaveri meets the ocean, two souls, Kovalan and Kannagi, got married. The marriage was more a marriage between two wealthy families. Of course, they fell in love, and all the vows of marriage and wedding was exchanged between them. Kannagi's beauty could be matched only by her own virtues. The marriage was going very fine, but fate always has its own way, isn't it? Kovalan left Kannagi and went and stayed and lived in and around Madhavi, the royal courtesan. He spent all his time, all his wealth with her, leaving Kannagi waiting and alone in her own house. When all his wealth was gone, and he had the suspicion, the jealousy that his love, Madhavi, was with other men too, he returned back. But would the doors be open? Or would Kannagi also shut the doors? His question was answered by an open door and open arms of Kannagi, for she never questioned him and just welcomed him back. They then decided to go to Madurai, a kingdom, a place of prosperity, and start the life fresh. They walked miles with a lot of stories unfolding in their journey. And as they reached Madurai, Kannagi saw Kovalan, worried as to how would we even start with nothing in our hands. Kannagi said, "Don't worry, my love, my beloved. Here, take one of my anklets. Go sell it in the market, and with whatever money you get, we shall start afresh." Kovalan left Kannagi to be looked after by some cowherd, elderly cowherd, and he went to the market. And as he was searching, he found a goldsmith. He didn't know that the goldsmith was a royal goldsmith and also a kind of cunning person who had stolen the queen's anklet. The moment the goldsmith saw the anklet, I was looking for a scapegoat, and here comes this stranger to our kingdom. He immediately runs to the king and tells the king that, "King, I found the queen's anklet and I found the thief too." The king, without investigating, ordered the thief, Kovalan, to be executed and sentenced him to death, and asked the goldsmith to bring the anklet back to the queen. As the news of Kovalan's death reached Kannagi, the silent, quiet, coy Kannagi turned into this woman of rage who rushed and entered the courts of the king, looked at the king and asked, "Aren't you supposed to be the just king? Aren't you the king of the kingdom where only justice prevails?" "Of course, I am, and your husband was a thief." "How could you even say that?" She took the other anklet and just threw it. The anklet broke and rubies scattered all over, and one of the rubies even splurted on the king's face. That's when he knew that he had made a huge mistake, for the queen's anklet had pearls in them. Out of shame, he just collapsed and died instantly. Kannagi's rage was not suppressed. She cursed that Madurai be burnt to flames, and that did happen. For they say she was a woman of chastity, and her words came true. She later went from the Pandyanad to the Cheranad, which is Kerala now, where she is still worshipped as goddess. And that is an abridged version of the classic Silappadigaram. Now, I would ask you all to take a moment to think about this story. If you've heard it, if you know, then maybe in detail, otherwise from whatever I have told you. What is that one word that comes to your mind when you think of this classic, or when you hear or listen to this classic Silappadigaram? That one word, you could unmute yourself or put it in the chat. What is that one word that comes to your mind? Justice. Justice. Eric says justice. Yes. Anyone else? What comes to your mind when we listen to that story? Truth. Truth. Meenu says truth, justice. Anyone else? Unrestrained anger. Yes. Talks about, the other things that come to my mind could be love, betrayal, could also be loyalty, grief, courage, there, shame. Yes, shame. So there are so many emotional aspects that come out once we listen to a classic, isn't it? So now coming back to what is an anchor? Anchor is that emotional pulse or that emotion that comes out to the audience, to every person who listens to a classic. And definitely it differs from person to person. As we have just seen, some saying anger, some saying justice, some saying truth, shame, power, loyalty, love, isn't it? And it's also from the teller's perspective, what is it that we would want to leave the audience with, or what remains in the audience's mind once the story is over? What is that one aspect of emotion that is left with the audience once the story ends? That is an audience. That is the anchor, isn't it? But how do we even identify an anchor? One or two ways that I felt we could identify an anchor is, one is we could probably choose a subject or an object from the classic itself. The other could be renaming of the classic. So if we take this story, Silapadigaram, the object or the symbol that I would pick is the anklet. So if I was to ask you a question as to what does the anklet literally mean to you, what would be your answer? What does the anklet literally mean? It's a piece of jewelry, right? Anklet literally means a piece of jewelry. But if I ask you the question, what does the anklet represent emotionally to you in the story Silapadigaram, what does it represent emotionally? Golusu, yes. But emotionally, what does the anklet or the silambu the relationship between Kovalan and Kannagi, probably the symbol of their marriage. Okay, relationship. What else does it represent emotionally? A boundary. Beautiful answer. It represents a boundary. Okay. Anything else that does it resonate emotionally? An awakening call. Yeah, it's an awakening call. It is the truth which was suppressed within until it was opened, literally, isn't it? An awakening call. Courage and bravery. Yes, anklet does represent that emotionally, isn't it? Okay, so what does the anklet represent socially or politically to you? If I have to ask, what does it represent socially to you or politically? as per the story, how it goes, it represents a status symbol. Yes, socially it represents a status symbol. It also represents the accountability of the state or of the kingdom or the king, isn't it? It also represents um, the evidence, the truth. So if I was to ask you, if we remove the anklet from Silapadigaram, does the story still be there? Will it collapse? Or how would it change? Or would the story still be there? What do you say? According to me, if the anklet is removed, the story just collapses. It's definitely not there anymore, isn't it? So, how would we even pick or even think of how do we choose an anchor from the story or from the classic? So, if you think of any story of any classic, the first question that probably we would ask is, why did you even tell the story, or why do you want to? Yeah, anklet represents the urban society that has goldsmith and the other jeweler makers, that makes the other crafts people. Yeah, that's what Eric says. So the first question that we probably would ask when we want to pick an anchor is, why do we want to tell the story? So when it comes to Silapadigaram, do I want to tell the story because I want to talk about love? Do I want to tell this story because I want to talk about betrayal, and because of the betrayal, what happens? Do I want to talk about the story for the anger which a woman or a man faces when there is injustice? Or is it a lot of suppressed anger in somebody which just bursts because of an injustice? Or do I want to tell the story of Silapadigaram because there is a failure from the state's point of view? A just king, a so called just king, did not investigate and was in haste to even give a verdict or a statement. So, why would I want to tell a story? Would be the first question that I would want to ask when I have to choose an anchor. The second is, why do I want to tell it to this audience? So, whether it's for the adults, whether it's for kids, so why would I want to tell? The other is, why does the story resonate to me or to you, whoever is the teller? Why does it resonate? And the fourth is, how would you want the storytelling to change the audience's thinking? So this, I think, the last question, how do you want the audience to change in their thinking, is where our anchor comes into play. For example, in this whole Kannagi story or Silapadigaram story, if my anchor is a failed states or a failed king, if that is what I want, or injustice that is delayed, if that is what is my anchor, the way I would tell the story would change in a way that the plot still remains the same, but the emotions might get shifted. The emphasis that I would give for Kannagi's rage or what she says in the court will come down. Though it is her curse which burns the entire Madurai, the stand that I would take is, Madurai was burnt because it was injustice that was done by the king, for he did not investigate and get the evidence right. There was a corrupt person in the state because of which the whole story happened. So the emphasis on the plot, in the scenes in the plot would change based on what our anchor would be. The other thing that was what I was mentioning is we could even rename a classic based on what we feel. For instance, if you are thinking about Silapadikaram, could you give me different headings or different titles for Silapadikaram? Can you think of that? A couple of them. Anything that you could think. If you have to rename Silapadikaram based on what touches you, what would Silapadikara's title be? Justice prevails. Justice denied is justice died. Okay. Anything else that comes to your mind? Story of an anklet. So based on how we have renamed or changed the title of the story, our approach to our narration or how we adopt the classic changes. So now I would request all of you to pick one classic or one story that you have recently told or you have been telling, and take a few moments, and I would want you to write or tell the anchor in a sentence or in a word. Pick a story or a classic or a story which is dear to your heart or which you've told recently. And what do you think is the anchor of that story in a word or in a sentence? Done? Anybody wants to share what is their story and what's the anchor of the story? Anyone? What's your story and what's the anchor? Okay, for Silapadigaram, it's the search for belonging. Okay, you could take any story. So Eric has chosen Silapadigaram itself. Anyone else? Okay, so um, now that you've got the anchor, can you list down the major events or the incidents that convey the anchor in your story? Just don't write the whole story. Just jot down what are the major events that's happened in the story or the emotional graph of the story. Roughly, just write it down. And once you've done that, check what events contribute or add to your anchor, circle them and score out the events that do not add to yours. king with the donkey ears. Appearance does not matter. Very nice. So, for instance, when I told about the Silapadigaram, and my anchor was the failure of the state, when I list down the various events, what adds to my anchor is about the goldsmith, about um, Kannagi giving that single anklet to Kovalan, and everything else, whatever has happened before them, is still the plot, but I would not give a lot of emphasis on that. And the emphasis is also given to what the thought process of the king, and also when he realizes that he's made a mistake and he dies instantly, probably that would be given more emphasis than what Kannagi conveyed in her rage in the court. Right? So how we could restructure our telling based on our anchor could be first finding out what resonates with us, or writing a line about it, writing all the events, then figuring out what events adds to our anchor and what doesn't add to our anchor, and restructure our telling based on the the circling that we have done. So with this, I think we know that anchor is something that which is already present in the story, and that which just speaks to you. So I would probably just would want to close by saying that classics can be adopted based on what we want to convey and what we feel the audience wants to give. An anchor can be one of the ways to do it. The other way, I think Parvati will explore, which is point of view. Over to you, Parvati.
Thank you, Anaga, and thank you, Meera, for setting the, what do you call it, as setting the setting for the thing. Okay, again, I'm going to take one of the story which I'm going to take is that particular incident in Ramayana. It was an ordinary day in Dasharatha's palace. Suddenly a commotion was heard, and one of the guards came running inside and said, "Sage Vishwamitra has come." Immediately, Dasharatha and all of them went outside to greet the great sage Vishwamitra, which, of course, everybody revered, and they welcomed him inside. Vishwamitra came. He refused to get into he just stood there and he proclaimed that we are having a lot of problems in the forest. The sages are being troubled by the demons there. And I request King Dasharatha to send his sons Rama and Lakshmana to come and help us out. There were a lot of people around who were hearing all this. They were all there. And this was what sage Vishwamitra proclaimed. Dasharatha just stood rooted at that place. What? My kids are only just 15, just about 15. You want them to, I shall come with you. But then Vishwamitra said, no, I want only Rama to come. Of course, Lakshmana would follow. So I want Rama and Lakshmana to come. And on hearing the advice of the other people, his teacher, Dasharatha agreed. And Rama and Lakshmana went ahead with Vishwamitra into the forest. I'm stopping my story there. I just want you to identify the characters in that particular incident which happened in Ramayana. Can you just list it out or even tell it out? Who are the characters whom you could picturize in that particular scene? Vishwamitra, yes. Dasharatha, Rama and Lakshmana. Okay. Okay. Now, a little more I would like to go into it. Can you identify characters which are, I have not mentioned at all, but you think in that particular scene or somewhere there would be other characters? Who could that be? Some other characters whom you can identify, you can tell could have been there. It's not there in the narration at all. But in your mind, they could be there. Your picture, when you hear a story, you picturize it. Mother, friends. Then, anybody else? Even there could be people, bystanders could be there, right? People are watching. People are there. Bharata, Shatrughna. Yes, the other brothers are there. Yeah. Now, when you have so many of them, now, here I told you, I told the story as it is. The incident had happened. But if I pick up one character from that particular scene, who are there or who are not there, and try to tell that story or that incident through that character, then don't you think that the, the emotions attached to that story would change? You agree with me? Yeah. So this, what I'm trying to tell you is, when you take a classic, the plot remains the same. The events also remain the same, but I can change the way I want my audience to look at that particular instant. When I take another character and tell that story through that particular eye, through their eyes. And that is the point of view. The story, the classic, it's told in the point of view of another person. The listener's attention shifts, the thought process shifts. Assuming I'm going to tell the story through the eyes of the mother, Kausalya. Okay, I put it to you. If the entire incident has been told from the mother's point of view, Kausalya's point of view, what emotions do you think will come out of that? Which I will leave it with the audience. You think? She is watching it from the sidelines. The incident is happening. Now she is going to describe the whole scene. It could be like, anybody has answered? I didn't see anything. Okay, I will just say. Kausalya looked. She heard the commotion and she just came out. She didn't come right outside. She just stood on the sidelines, and she was watching what was happening. And she saw Sage Vishwamitra had come there. And he had proclaimed that Rama and Lakshmana should go into the forest. My Rama and my Lakshmana going to the forest? They're such small children. My God, they shouldn't go. They're too young. My husband Dasharatha is a famous warrior. He can go. I think my husband will take the right decision and allow and will say that he would go. What? King Dasharatha has agreed for Rama and Lakshmana to go? How could he agree to that? What? Me? Mother? He didn't even bother to ask me. me, the mother of the child of Rama and Sumitra, he never bothered to ask about what would happen. I mean, that is one way you can bring the whole story, bring the change when it is through a point of view of another person. Say a bystander. A bystander is watching and he's wondering, what? Why does the king allow the small children to go to the? He's allowing the children to go to the forest. See, they have no choice. Neither the mother nor the bystander has any say in the events which follow. It is the feelings, their thoughts which get captured when I retell a story through another point of view. We cannot change the story. The story is going to happen. The events are happening one after the other as it is the original story. We are not changing it. But when I tell it from another point of view, when I tell it through the eyes of Kausalya, or I tell it through the eyes of the bystander, or even the eyes of Lakshmana, or even the eyes of Vishwamitra, who could take a stand. I understand what the parents would be thinking, but for me, duty is important. I have to take care of my yajnas, which are happening, and I have to take of my sages. He takes a different view altogether. He's not bothered by these small things. He's aware of it. So, in a classic can be retold or rather adopted. We are not adapting it. We are adopting it by telling it, retelling it through the eyes of another person who will in the story itself be there, or whom you think could have been there. You can justify that they are there. Mother could be there, bystander is there, it could happen. So what we try to tell is, we will talk from the point of view of the mother, her fears, her thoughts, her acceptance of the whole thing for the mother. That's it. There's another story in the Sangam era, like Silapadikaram and Manimekale. Kundalakeshi is another story. And Kundalakeshi, there are the main characters are, there's one girl, the girl's father, and there's a husband. So if we take any of these characters and tell the story, the emotions attached to it varies. The story plot is the same. The story goes that the girl who falls in love with a big thief. He's actually not only a thief, he's very bad. He's a very bad man, evil man as per society. He was actually sent to the prison. But this girl falls in love with that guy and insists that she would marry him. And the father allows the marriage. It's actually they have a good married life, but somewhere some issues crop up, and the man gets back his original evil. He's an evil person there in that character, and he tries to take advantage of his wife, of his wealth, of his wife. The girl understands this happens, and at that point of time, instead of her getting killed by this man, she kills this man. That's the story, the crux of that whole story. But when I told the story of Kundalakeshi, I picked up the father as from the father's point of view. I tried telling the story. It was the father's love for that girl because she didn't have a mother. So the initial things would be about the father trying to bring up the child, give her whatever she wants, he would give. To the extent that a situation had come when he himself, though he knew that that man was bad and he was getting jailed, he falls at the feet of the king, and for his daughter takes him as his son-in-law. So the entire emotions change. It's a father's love. Father's love to the extent that he is willing to go to the other limit for his one and only daughter. That is what the fear. Then I bring in the fears of the father when he realizes her son, his daughter wants to marry this guy. And then there is an element of a little element of satisfaction. Okay, now they are happy. But then at the end of the story, the father is helpless, finds that the son-in-law has not changed, and his daughter had to take that extreme step. A disappointment. It was not disappointment, it is sadness on the part for the father. That's how I brought out that story with that POV. So the point of view changes with the eyes of, through the eyes of that particular character you do that. As an activity, I would like you to, I have told you 2 stories. If you could note somewhere in the chat box one character from either of them and have the sentence, I always wished that. Any character and answer, complete the sentence. I always wish that. That character is telling, I always wish that. The same character says, I never told anyone that. This is fear, maybe. I never told anyone that. And the third is, if this had not happened, my life would be. Yeah, Rick says in Kundalikeshi, she killed her husband in self-defense. Still, she felt guilt. Yeah, and that guilt made her think about the whole thing. It was not guilt that I don't know. The guilt could be that she didn't listen to her father. She thought she could change him, um, make that man a better person. It didn't happen. And then she becomes a monk. That's how the story ends in Kundalikesh. In fact, in the story, it says that they pull the hair out one by one by one. That's how. And it grows back into curls. It's like, that's how it's. Nobody has any thoughts? Any character could you pick up from the stories? Either Ramayana story or the Kundalikeshi story? Okay, can I nudge you a little? Say if you take Kausalya, I never told anyone that. It could complete it if you feel like. my or even the girl in Kundalakishi, if this had not happened, my life would be. Isn't that something we always think? Truly, that had not
Yes,
happened.
maybe it could be like this is how the modern days are, huh? Girls don't want to get married, they want to have a single life, all independent, financial independence, freedom everywhere, whatever want they could do. That's how the girls think. I think there's nothing. The classic can be even diverted towards even the customs and tradition that we are in today. Huh? That girl might have been a different life. You never know.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
That's one of the reasons this story fascinated me. There was
yeah,
something strong in that lady also, that girl. Okay,
Mhm.
she knew she had made wrong choices. She realized it maybe, and she tried to find an answer, but whether the answer was correct is not it, but there was it.
yeah.
Acceptance of whatever she had taken
Mm.
in. Since nobody is answering that, Mira, can you? You're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you, Parvati. Yeah. Can we just pause here and then check if you have any questions, any thoughts that you wanted to share about experiments you have done or about retelling for some of them who've joined us now in the last half an hour or so. So we are talking about adopting classics to oral storytelling rather than just adapting the plot. So, any thoughts, any questions, anything that you felt worked for you, if you would like to share, that would be great. Anyone would want to share at any point of time when you had an opportunity to do an oral telling of a classic, or if you had an opportunity to use a classic in a different way, uh, what worked for you, or any questions based on whatever we have said. Um, any holes that you would like to poke so that we can also think over it?
Yeah. Can I
Yes,
go ahead?
Raji. Please, Raji. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know about whether I have retold a story in a different way, but now nowadays the modern writers Amish Tripathi and Ashok Bankers have written about Ramayana, Sita, Sri Lanka, and all these things. That's what they say. They have portrayed Sita as a modern lady. Like if she were to not have to go so many sacrifices, if she were to question what would happen, how would happen, we think on those lines. And then about Ravana also. Like these days, it is also said Ravana was, I don't know, as children, we always felt Ravana was like a villain, though he was a superman. He was the greatest bhakta of Shiva. He had all the strength. But still, as children, when I was a child, Ravana was always considered to be as he was a villain, he was a bad man who brought in somebody, eloped with somebody's wife. But nowadays, Ravana is portrayed as someone very huge and very big. Because they say if you make the villain bigger, then the hero of the classic becomes much bigger. That's what today's cinemas, today's like Ashok Banker and all this Amish Tripathi say. They say it's modern. Maybe you can think your own way. I'm just saying what I felt, but I've never retold a classic in a different way. I'm just thinking. I've read some articles here and there about Ashok Banker's Ramayana and Amish Tripathi, what they say. Just
Yeah.
connecting it to them. Yes. Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Raji. Yeah. So I think uh, there, where what we were talking about, the anchor that they wanted to bring out from the story was something that could be, you and any of us. It could be different from what is that comes out, right in your face from the initial when you read that classic. And of course these are epics, even any other classic. So of course there are, you can there is something to it that there are some people who completely change the plot line itself and make it
Yes,
something
yes,
completely different.
correct.
In my personal view, I would say that is an adaptation, which is their call, and nothing wrong with that. But please don't call it the classic anymore, because there is something so connected. A classic is like a fabric where all the threads are coming together. You can remake, you can create a new fabric. There's nothing at all wrong with that. And I think once the copyright of a story is over, you're free to do it in any
Yeah.
way you choose. But then I would say that if the essence of the soul is not coming through, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, something that you mentioned, that caricaturing the villain to be something more powerful, that is a thought process, right? That is a thought process. And in the Ramayana itself, there are many areas where the power of Ravana is brought out in a huge way. So it is not that he is suppressed or subdued, but
Mm-hmm.
Ramayana is very, at least Valmiki's Ramayana is very linear narration. So only characters come and go as and when they happen. So bringing that, intensifying that part, I would say that still works. But changing the story completely, I would say rename the classic completely itself, if that is what. I mean, that's what I feel. Of course, many would disagree with that, of course. So I saw one question on the chat. 1 minute. Yeah. Indian epics to Western audience that don't know the context, especially in a 15-minute slot. Definitely, that is a very big call, right? Because that's something that I was going to talk about. That the three traps, literally. So when you're retelling the classic, so one is of course the plot trap, where you start thinking of the story as the plot, and in many times, what happens is when an Indian epic or even an Indian classic, let alone to a foreign audience, many times when I retell an Indian classic to my own children, they are not able to resonate. The generation has passed, right? They're not even able to see what is this entire thing which is all about. So it sometimes becomes simply easy to slip into the plot trap, where you say that this is the plot, this is what happened. But I would say that that is definitely a trap, because they will never be able to see it as a classic. It will come out as a simple story. Now the second trap is the comfort trap. So the comfort trap is, there are in every classic, including the Indian epics, there are a lot of things which are uncomfortable. There are a lot of moral dilemmas. Now, if you're telling it to children, it's another point of view. I mean, you set a ceiling at what it is okay to tell them. Well, but if you are telling to any audience, in, let's say, a Western audience, there is again sometimes a tendency to let out, which is where all the cultural aspects of it come through. So, what is the comfort level? So, can I re-modernize it to tell it in a way which they can resonate with? Yes, definitely. But what are you losing in the process? Right? That is something that when you fall into the comfort trap, again, you're losing the essence of what that entire classic was all about. Because a classic is a very complex telling of a story. And the next trap is again the fable trap, I would like to call it, where we try to tell that, the entire classic of, let's say, so many pages, a few thousand pages, can be put in one line. And I want to simplify it to tell somebody. So now, just to answer the question from my own perspective, and again, this is my perspective, and I would like all the storytellers here to add their own perspective to it. I would say that if at all I have to retell an Indian epic to a Western audience in a very short time slot, like in, let's say, a 15-minute slot, all these three traps come and hit you in your face. So there is a fable trap, there is a comfort trap, and there is definitely a plot trap. So if I had to, I would definitely try to see. I would definitely work on the anchor, right? And if possible, try to see what part of it, if not the whole of it, makes sense to that anchor. So anchor is what Anaga spoke about, is actually a very interesting way to concise a classic. And if it is even shorter than that, further we are looking at it, then can you tell a part of it? Can you tell a story from it? Fortunately, I think Indian epics are nested. They're very nested. Like there are multiple stories that just bubble up through it, and they're all simply like we have a gajra in India, right? It's like a garland of flowers which is put together, and while each flower by itself is beautiful, uh, it means something for them to be together. But that doesn't take away from a single flower. So if you do want to, I would, in my view, I would probably pick up a part of it rather than a whole of it, and work very hard on the anchor so that I know what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Thank you. Well, yeah, that was what we had for today. That was what we wanted to bring in. Basically, retelling a classic, but without losing its essence. So, some of the keys that you have to unlock a classic, and again, to end it with that one line, which we believe have guided us whenever we experimented with it. Adopt it, not adapt it. So, yes, there you are. Thank you very much, Eric, for this opportunity and sharing our thoughts.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very interesting. And in the course of the workshop, I came up with the term emblematic. It seems to me that a classic is emblematic of a particular time period and culture, but it may be emblematic of the time and place portrayed in the story, but it may no longer be emblematic of today's day and age. So that's why whenever a classic is told, there's going to be some debate, some contest about whether the classic still applies to the current day in the same way that it might have applied at the time of the classic itself, or at the time the classic was first presented to the public.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, that's a very interesting thought. But I do feel that it is, yes, it's actually very true. And usually we always face such, debates even among ourselves when we are like, what is this? This doesn't even make sense anymore today. Seems to be the thought that comes to us. But yes, at the end of it, a loss is a loss, a gain is a gain. The emotions and the heart still go through. So just as we are ready to accept emotions and thoughts and stories that take place in a future era which no one has any knowledge about when we are doing a science fiction. So I think it is important to know, important to tell our audience also that when you're talking about a classic, it is not the current era. So as we are telling, bring the focus onto what the character is going through, what is happening in their hearts and minds as they relate, they lose, they gain, they win, rather than the period itself. Especially if it is for a general purpose retelling.
Mhm.
So, but definitely there is a beautiful. I mean, I think that's a beautiful word. The emblemat classic is really, representing that. The culture of that period, and if someone is interested in that, then that's really great.
Great. Okay, thank you very much.
So much. Thank you.
Thank you.